In this episode of Why Is That, Dad? A child's frustration sorting recyclables opens into a comprehensive look at America's waste infrastructure, from transfer stations and engineered sanitary landfills to waste to energy incineration, and the surprising engineering underneath a modern megafill. We trace the history of garbage disposal from ancient Athens and the Great Stink of Victorian London through the 1937 Fresno sanitary landfill, the legendary Mobro 4000 garbage barge saga of 1987, and a colossal fresh kills operation on Staten Island, now being reborn as one of New York City's greatest parks. We then expose the plastic recycling myth, including China's 2018 national sword import ban that collapsed the illusion, the truth about those numbered triangles on every plastic container, and what recycling is actually worth doing versus what is mostly wishful thinking. Welcome back to Why Is That, Dad? Unpacking the science, history, and culture of everyday questions for curious adults and kids. I'm your host, Phil, and joining me today is my daughter, Cecilia.
Hi, Dad.
Today we have a long one with lots of obscure trivia, but relevant. So I want to give the audience a little context, because the question behind today's episode is a recurring one. I have my kids put the garbage in the garbage bin and the recycling in the recycling bin. And if it isn't done right, I have to sort it myself.
Well, I was trying to help, and I could not figure out the rules. Some plastic goes in recycling, some plastic goes in trash. Some cardboard is recyclable, other cardboard isn't. Foam cups, trash. A pizza box, apparently it depends on who you ask.
The pizza box is always a philosophical debate in this house.
And then, if we get it wrong, you're standing there holding up my yogurt container like it's evidence at a crime scene.
To be fair, there was still yogurt in it.
Nobody told me it had to be clean. There's so many rules. Why is that, Dad? And does any of it even matter?
I know, it's complicated, and the rules feel inconsistent. But the short answer, as far as plastics go, they're different plastics. Not all plastic is the same material. A water bottle and a styrofoam cup have about as much in common chemically as wood and steel. They just both happen to be called plastic. And different materials require totally different processes to recycle, some of which aren't economically viable at all. So the rules exist because the system behind your bin is sorting by chemistry, not by what something looks like.
Wait, so plastic isn't just plastic?
Not even close. And that's the thread I want to pull on today, because behind your yogurt container is this enormous, surprisingly dark story about what we actually do with everything we throw away. The infrastructure, the history, the environmental consequences, and some parts that are going to genuinely bother you.
Great! I love when things bother me.
That's the spirit of learning right there. Learning the truth can hurt sometimes. Let's start with the numbers, because they frame everything else. The average American generates about 4.5 to 5 pounds of trash every single day.
Per person? Every day? What about Iggy? He's only a year and a half.
Yep, him too. He uses diapers, which become garbage. And to be clear, this accounts for all garbage, residential, commercial, and institutional waste, added up and divided by the population. You produce waste even if it doesn't end up in your bin. That adds up to roughly 1,700 pounds a year. Across the whole country, we're producing about 292 million tons of municipal solid waste annually.
I can't even picture that.
Every 15 and a half hours, Americans throw enough plastic away alone to completely fill AT&T Stadium. That's where the Dallas Cowboys play, and it holds 100,000 people.
That's embarrassing.
It really is. The global average is about 1.5 pounds of trash per person per day. We're generating 5. The US is about 4% of the world's population and produces about 12% of the world's trash.
So we're dramatically overperforming in garbage.
Probably not a good thing to outperform in. Now, do you know where it goes when we get rid of it?
Yeah, it goes to the garage.
I mean, after the garage.
I thought it just disappeared. I put the trash in the big trash can in the garage, and the next time I do it, it's empty.
Who do you think does that? I do.
Honestly, I've never thought about it past the trash can.
Most people haven't. First stop is something called a transfer station, what you may call the dump. It's a big logistics hub. The neighborhood garbage truck is too small and slow to haul everything all the way to a landfill efficiently. So it drops the load at the transfer station, where waste gets compacted into massive, long-haul loads and moved by big trucks, sometimes rail cars and sometimes barges.
There's a whole hidden middleman step nobody talks about.
Completely invisible to most people. From there, waste goes one of several directions. About 50% of our municipal solid waste ends up buried in landfills. About 12% goes to waste to energy incineration. Roughly 32% enters the recycling stream. The rest gets composted or otherwise managed.
Waste to energy? Like turning garbage into energy? How does that work?
About 70 waste to energy plants across the US burn municipal solid waste, use the heat to make steam, steam spins turbines, turbines generate electricity. Together, they produce roughly 15 billion kilowatt hours a year, enough to power around 2.5 million homes.
Okay, that's actually impressive.
Our state of Connecticut has 4 of them. It is impressive, and burning dramatically reduces volume. You lose most of the mass to combustion. But it's controversial because some of what burns, certain plastics, materials with heavy metals, releases toxic compounds even under controlled conditions.
So, useful, but messy.
And expensive. That phrase describes basically every solution to waste management.
Okay, you said landfills are still the biggest piece. I picture just a massive pile of garbage on the field somewhere. Is that really what it looks like?
A modern landfill looks almost nothing like that. It is a serious feat of engineering. But to understand why, you need history. Because the story of how humanity has handled garbage is genuinely wild.
How far back are we going?
Athens, Greece, around 500 BC. They passed what might be the first waste management law in Western history. Garbage had to be dumped at least a mile outside of city walls.
Even back then. Not in my backyard.
Same instinct, different era, but for centuries after that, people basically ignored the Athenian example. Through the Middle Ages, through the Industrial Revolution, European cities were choking in waste. People threw garbage and human waste directly out their windows into the street. Have you ever heard of the Great Stink of London?
Yeah, I heard about it on the podcast Everything Everywhere.
Well, I'll recap it for our listeners who haven't heard. I'm skipping some backstory, but in the summer of 1858, the Thames River was so loaded with raw sewage and rotting waste that the smell had overtaken the entire city. Members of Parliament had to soak the curtains in chloride of lime just to get through their meetings without being sick.
Because of garbage?
Yep, and here's the fascinating part. The scientific theory at the time was called miasma theory. Doctors genuinely believed diseases like cholera were spread by breathing bad smells, not bacteria, not contaminated water, the bad air itself.
They thought the smell was making people sick?
The theory wasn't factually accurate, but it led to the right result. Because they were terrified of the smell, they finally built modern sewer and waste removal systems. London's Great Sewer Network was engineered directly out of that panic.
So, getting the right answer from the wrong reason actually saved lives.
Sometimes you stumble into doing the right thing. In America, through the 1800s, things were just as chaotic. Open dumps, pigs eating refuse in city streets, rivers as trash chutes. New York City's first real system didn't exist until 1895, when a man named Colonel George Waring became street cleaning commissioner. He built the first serious waste collection infrastructure in an American city, and dressed his sanitation workers in white uniforms to signal this was a clean, legitimate, important profession.
Kernel of garbage. I love it.
He would have put the Colonel Sanders to shame. He would have adored that title. But the real modern turning point is 1937 in Fresno, California. A man named Jean Vincennes opens what's now recognized as the first true sanitary landfill in the United States. His method? Dig a trench, compact the waste into it using a specially designed drop bucket machine, and every single day cover the active face with a thick layer of soil.
Why is that, Dad? Like, why does the soil cover change everything?
Because the daily cover was the difference between the sanitary landfill and an open dump. Open dumps caught fire from internal heat buildup, attracted rats and birds by the millions, smelled for miles, and rainwater running through exposed waste washed toxins straight into groundwater. The soil layer cut off oxygen to eliminate fire risk, suppressed odors, and physically separated the active waste from pests and weather. It sounds simple, and it changed everything.
So, Fresno basically solved garbage?
They invented the method. Here's a twist. That Fresno site was designated a National Historic Landmark in 2001 because of its engineering importance. But back in 1983, the EPA had already put it on the Superfund list of the country's most hazardous contaminated sites because toxic chemicals had leached into the groundwater.
A National Historic Landmark and a toxic Superfund site. At the same time, sounds like very American.
It really is. World War II then accelerated the landfill movement. Wartime rationing trained people to treat materials as valuable, and the military's disciplined approach to field waste disposal helped normalize covered, managed landfilling. By the end of the war, over 100 American cities had sanitary landfills. Then the post war consumer boom hit. The plastic packaging exploded, convenience foods took off, and suddenly we're generating waste at volumes nobody had anticipated.
And there weren't enough of the right kind of landfills.
There were 20,000 waste disposal sites in the country by the 1960s, most of them informal, basically still open dumps with slightly more official names. Nixon created the EPA in 1970, and Congress passed the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act in 1976, requiring properly engineered, lined, managed facilities. Open dumps were officially banned in 1979.
So, what happened to all 20,000 of them?
Massive consolidation. We're down to about 2,000 operating landfills now, 90% gone. But here's the important thing: total capacity didn't shrink. The remaining landfills became enormous regional megafills. The number shrank dramatically. The scale didn't.
What does one of these megafills actually look like on the inside?
Picture giant cells dug into the earth. Before any waste goes in, the bottom is lined, first with compacted clay, then with thick puncture-resistant synthetic liner. On top of the liner is a leachate collection system.
Leachate?
The liquid that percolates down through the decomposing garbage. Rainwater mixes with the waste, picks up every toxic chemical and heavy metal, and produces this dark, poisonous soup. The collection system uses perforated pipes to capture it before it ever reaches groundwater and pumps it to a treatment facility. Then waste goes in, compacted by heavy machinery and careful daily layers, each getting its soil cover. And running up through the whole mass are methane vents.
Methane vents? Why is that, Dad?
All that organic material, food scraps, paper, yard waste, is buried and compressed with no oxygen. Anaerobic decomposition produces methane instead of carbon dioxide, and the quantity is staggering. U.S. landfill methane emissions are equivalent to the greenhouse gas output of roughly 24 million gasoline-powered cars driven for an entire year.
24 million cars from garbage sitting underground.
Methane is about 80 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than CO2 over a 20-year window. And there's a troubling wrinkle. Independent satellite and airborne studies suggest the EPA's official figures may undercount real emissions by 2, 3, or even up to 6 times in some locations, because the standard method relies on self-reported models rather than direct atmospheric measurement.
So we might be producing more than anyone admits.
In many places, yes. The good news, about 500 landfills now capture that methane and run it through an on-site power plants. When a cell is finally full and sealed, it gets permanently capped with clay liner, topsoil, and grass. But it keeps producing methane for decades after closure, so the venting and monitoring stay active long after the site stops accepting waste.
And then the land becomes what?
That's the rabbit hole.
Let's go.
Picture this. There's a ski slope in Germantown, Wisconsin that operates on a capped landfill. People are happily skiing on compacted municipal solid waste.
Skiing on garbage?
Well, the garbage has been capped. It's dirt and grass as far as your eye would let you believe. And then it snows. What else is there to do on a cold Wisconsin day?
Eat cheese? Drink hot cocoa? Go to a Packers game?
That too. Over 100 former landfills across America are now golf courses, parks, athletic fields, and ski hills. The JFK Presidential Library in Boston, built on a former landfill. Mile High Stadium in Denver, home of the Broncos for years, former landfill. But the greatest example is Fresh Kills on Staten Island, opened in 1948 as a supposedly temporary 3-year fix. By 1955, it was the largest landfill in the world. At its peak in 1986, it received 29,000 tons of residential garbage every single day. Some of the mounds reached over 225 feet high, taller than the Statue of Liberty from base to torch.
Taller than the Statue of Liberty, made entirely of trash.
The Green Lady is only 151 feet tall, shorter than some people imagine. Regardless, archaeologists have called Fresh Kills one of the largest man-made structures in human history. Staten Island residents fought for decades to close it. The smell, the seagulls, the endless truck convoys. It finally closed in March 2001, and now it's being converted into Fresh Kills Park, a project that will eventually cover 2,200 acres, making it roughly 3 times the size of Central Park and one of the largest parks developed in New York City in over a century. The site already features trails, sports fields, kayaking waterways, and public art installations, with new sections opening in phases as the land is remediated. Ecologically, it's becoming a surprising success story. Over 200 bird species documented on the site, including osprey and red-tailed hawks, as native grasses and wetlands reclaim the former mounds. And underneath it all, the decomposing waste still generates methane, which is captured through an extensive pipe network and sent to a Con Edison facility where it feeds natural gas into the local grid. The buried garbage of a generation is still quietly powering homes across Staten Island today.
From Garbage Mountain to Bird Sanctuary, gas facility to municipal park. That's actually a success story.
One of the better ones in this whole saga, yes.
So far, we haven't talked about recycling at all, which was kind of my initial question. How are you going to segue into recycling?
With a barge.
A barge?
Spring of 1987, New York City loads 3,186 tons of Long Island residential garbage onto a barge called the Mobro 4000. The plan, haul it south to a landfill in North Carolina with extra capacity, where it would supposedly be processed into methane. Seems reasonable.
I feel like it didn't go so smoothly.
North Carolina regulators heard rumors about potential hazardous materials in a load and turned it away, so the captain kept going. Louisiana? Nope. Alabama? Nope. Mississippi? Texas? Florida? They all refused. Mexico, Belize, and the Bahamas also said no. Belize reportedly considered deploying its navy.
Their navy? For a garbage barge?
Dan Rather went on CBS News and called it the most watched load of garbage in the memory of man. Johnny Carson made jokes about it on The Tonight Show every night. After 6,000 miles and nearly 5 months at sea, the Mobro returned to New York. The trash was incinerated in Brooklyn and ash buried in a local landfill.
After 6,000 miles, it ended up 20 miles from where it started. That's not heroic. That is genuinely stupid.
Nobody would accept it. That was the whole point. But the entire country watched it on the nightly news and concluded, we are running out of space. We need to recycle. Curbside recycling programs expanded dramatically in the years immediately after. The Mobro 4000, a single garbage barge, accidentally catalyzed the modern American recycling movement.
One barge changed national policy.
Here's the irony, though. The crisis was partly manufactured panic. When the federal regulations forced thousands of old-style dumps to close, in conjunction with the Mobro, it looked like we were running out of room. But we weren't running out of land. We were running out of permitted, regulated sites. The new megafills had plenty of capacity. The shortage was regulatory, not geographic.
The panic produced the right outcome for the wrong reason. That seems to happen a lot in history.
And there's something almost poetic about the fact that the miasma theory saved London's water supply for the same reason. The right fix, wrong diagnosis.
So now we talk about recycling?
Yep.
Okay, is recycling actually doing anything good? Because after everything you've told me, I'm a little scared of the answer. And then I'm just wasting my effort.
Honest answer, it depends entirely on what you're recycling. Let me give you the good news first. Recycling and composting together divert roughly 94 million tons of material from landfills every year in the US.
That sounds significant.
It is. Out of the 292 million tons we generate, about 32% is staying out of the ground. To put it in terms you can picture, that's the equivalent weight of about 6 million full garbage trucks worth of material that didn't get buried.
So recycling is working?
For some materials, genuinely well. Aluminum, steel, paper, cardboard, glass, those are real success stories. Aluminum especially. Recycling it takes about 5% of the energy needed to produce it from raw ore. You can recycle it indefinitely without it degrading. Same with glass. Paper and cardboard have about a 47% recycling rate, and the system handles them reasonably well. The problem, and it is a significant problem, is plastic. And plastic is on everything.
So what's wrong with plastic recycling specifically?
Let's go back to those numbers 1 through 7 in the triangle on plastic containers, the ones you were looking at today.
Yeah, I thought that triangle was the recycling symbol. I thought it meant it was recyclable.
Almost everybody does. Those are called resin identification codes, created in 1988 by the Society of the Plastics Industry to identify what type of plastic resin a product is made from. They were never designed to indicate recyclability. The industry borrowed the recycling arrow shape and put it on the label, and the confusion has been baked in ever since. A survey found 92% of Americans don't understand what those codes actually mean.
So basically, all of us?
Here's a real breakdown. Plastics 1 and 2, water bottles, milk jugs, detergent containers, genuinely recyclable, accepted at almost every curbside program. Plastics 3, 6, and 7, almost never accepted at curbside. Number 3 is PVC and releases toxic compounds during processing. Number 6 is polystyrene, styrofoam, too light to store economically and shatters into particles during handling. Number 7 is a catch-all for everything else. Mixed materials, bioplastics, polycarbonate, rarely recyclable in most systems. Number 4 and 5 are a middle ground. Some programs take them and many don't. Check your local guidelines.
So half plastics I've been putting in the bin were probably always going to the landfills anyway.
Possibly, yes. And here's a deeper problem. For decades, the US solved this by shipping low quality, contaminated plastic scrap to China, where labor was cheap enough to store it by hand. At the peak, roughly 70% of the plastic collected for recycling in the US was being sent to Chinese processors.
That's outsourcing the guilt.
Exactly what it was. And in January 2018, China enacted a policy called National Sword, banned imports of most plastics, set contamination standards so strict that almost nothing the US was shipping could qualify. Programs that depended on that market suddenly had no buyer. Plastics that had been recycled started going straight to landfills. Some municipalities canceled their curbside programs entirely.
So for years, some of what went in the blue bin was just being buried in China instead of here.
We exported the problem with the material, and there is a physical limitation with plastic that glass and aluminum don't share. Every time plastic is melted and reprocessed, the polymer chains degrade. Most plastic survives only 1 or 2 cycles before it's too weak for commercial use. Manufacturers have to add virgin plastic made from oil to restore it.
So the recycling loop for plastic is actually pretty short.
Less than 10% of all plastic ever produced has been recycled. Some recent estimates put the actual functional rate below 5%.
That is so much lower than I assumed. Okay, so based on everything you just told me, why do you think the rules feel so arbitrary to most people?
What do you think?
Because if you don't know the reason behind the rule, it just looks like someone made it up randomly. Don't put the grocery bag in the bin. Sounds like a weird rule, until you know it wraps around the sorting machine rollers and shuts down the whole facility. Then it's obvious.
That's a holistic approach. The difference between blindly following a rule and understanding why it exists is the difference between being pushed around by the world and actually knowing how to move through it. You can't make good decisions about something you don't understand.
This is a lot. The garbage mountains, the ocean of numbers, the fake recycling codes. I thought I was just confused about a pizza box.
Pizza boxes contain multitudes.
Is any of this actually hopeful?
It's not hopeless, it's just honest. Fresh Kills became a bird sanctuary in a park. 500 landfills are capturing methane and making electricity. The same culture that created this mess is slowly building better systems. But here's a piece I want to land on, because it connects to how we're supposed to live. The church calls it stewardship. We're not the owners of creation. We're the caretakers of it. What a century of mass consumption has built is basically the opposite of stewardship. Use it, bag it, forget it. But recognizing that and choosing differently, even in small ways, is what prudence looks like. Not timidity, not guilt paralysis. Understanding the full picture and acting accordingly. The single most effective individual action, by the way, reduce how much single-use plastic you buy in the first place, before the yogurt container is ever in your hand.
So, what do I actually do with the yogurt container? Like, right now?
You rinse it. You check the number on the bottom. If it's a 1 or a 2 and your local program takes it, you recycle it. If not, it's trash.
That's it?
That's it. One container, one choice. It's not going to fix everything. The methane is still leaking somewhere. The plastic problem is still enormous. But it's not nothing.
I don't have to fix the whole world to do the right thing.
That's what prudence sounds like. All right, trivia time. 3 questions for everyone listening at home. Cecilia?
Question 1. What year did the first modern sanitary landfill in the United States open? And in what city? Question 2. In 1987, a garbage barge was rejected by 6 U.S. states and 3 countries before returning to New York after nearly 5 months at sea. What was the name of the barge? Question 3. True or false? The triangle with numbers 1 through 7 on plastic containers means the plastic is recyclable.
If you know the answers to any of those, post them in the comments section. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you've been listening to Why Is That Dad and learning something, laughing a little, going down your own rabbit holes, the best thing you can do for the show is leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen. It takes 30 seconds. It genuinely matters for helping new listeners find us, and we're grateful every time. Hey Cecilia, want to hear a joke?
Fine, hit me.
Why did the landfill get a promotion?
Why is that, Dad?
Because he was outstanding in its field.
I hate that I laughed.
That's how you know it's a good one. Thanks for listening, everybody. Until next time, keep asking questions.
Why is that, Dad?
Because that's how you understand the world, one question at a time. God bless.
Dad, you didn't talk about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, the Mafia, and other dirty garbage secrets.
That's for a future episode. Next episode, though, will be on patriotism.
3 cheers for the red, white, and blue.